Hello and welcome into the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host TJ Mabardi. We are coming to you live today on Monday, August 19th. We have another weekend of NFL preseason action in the books. We're going to be reacting to some of the biggest stories from that, starting off by handing out grades to some notable performances from first-round rookies as they are expected to take on big roles for their teams in the upcoming season. We're going to be focusing on some of the top quarterbacks as well as some of the top pass catchers as well and how they looked in their game over the weekend. We are then going to be diving into some debates surrounding the quarterback battles that are taking place across the league, the ongoing situation with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin's comments on the quarterback one race there in Pittsburgh, the Las Vegas Raiders finally making a decision on who their starter will be after both Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell neither one of them won the job, but one of them did come away with it. So we'll be breaking down that and what the season looks like ahead for the Raiders. Daniel Jones got his first game reps since last November when he tore his ACL. So we got a first look at him once again. So we'll be diving into that. And then to cap off the show, we will be discussing the weekend series in the MLB between the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles, which saw a sweep there. So a whole lot to get into. Before we do so, though, just a reminder to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. If you have a question during the show, we want to hear about it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your insights as well, whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an observation that you had about the NFL over the weekend. Don't hesitate to use the comment section as we try and make this show as interactive as possible. Additionally, if you would consider using the super chat button, you can help support the channel here and get your comments the priority that they deserve. Anything would be greatly appreciated there. We're going to be starting out the show today by talking about some of the top performances from rookies in their Week 2 NFL preseason games. And we are going to be starting off here with, of course, the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams. And for Caleb and the Bears, it was a very slow start to the game, which is why this grade is maybe a little bit lower than some fans who might have just watched the highlight reels could think, because, Caleb's grade in this game was really boosted by those final 2 drives with Chicago, where after going 3 and out on each of their drives in the first quarter, all 3 of them resulted in 3 and outs, and because of that, Caleb and the starting offense, which was only expected to get about 1 quarter's worth of play, they rolled into the second quarter as well, and then finally started to build up some momentum for what is going to take place long term with the Bears, where obviously this is a very pressing season for them. And they need to be able to take advantage of this rookie quarterback contract. And I think that ultimately, again, the beginning of the game was a bit rough for Caleb Williams to some degree. Through each of the first 3 plays, he was high for Keenan Allen. I thought that he misread the coverage on the second play where he seemed to have Keenan Allen on that second level once again, but instead he went more so towards the line of scrimmage and threw it behind Gerald Everett. So ultimately, it was a very slow start for this Bears offense. Second drive, couple runs, Caleb throws short of the sticks for another 3 and out, but eventually, when the second quarter came around, we saw them start to get a little bit more comfortable. They got Rome Odunze involved as well. Caleb Williams making some of those off-platform throws, scrambling, making big plays. Now, there was just inconsistencies with him that weighed down this grade a little bit, but ultimately, Caleb had a pretty solid debut, or a pretty solid showing, and it was very encouraging to see some of the high-end performance plays that he, and the degree of difficulty of some of the throws that he's going to be able to make do separate himself. So I have a B, which is maybe a little bit harsh, but again, full quarter of non-production. Let me know what you think in the comments section. While we're on the Bears, though, may as well hit on their other top 10 pick in Rome Odunze. I have Rome with a C+ in this game. He had some big-time plays for them. The end around at the beginning of the second quarter is what sort of ignited the Bears offense. I thought it was a great play design by offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. The misdirection to the right and then flipping it back around the outside to Odunze, where once he's in open space, you can very much see the athleticism with this player. But the sort of big play for Odunze was the fact that he was unable to get both of his feet inbounds in the back of the end zone when Caleb tried to hit him there on their red zone possession. He was all alone in the back corner of the end zone. Just have to have better awareness there to make sure that your feet are in bounds. It was a little bit interesting to me, especially just coming off of, I watched the second episode of Hard Knocks about a day or so before, and there was a clip at one point there where Odunze was out of the back of the end zone and one of the veteran DBs called him out on it. And it was just a throwaway moment from the clip, but then we see him having this issue of not staying in bounds during the game as well. That seems to be maybe a little bit of a point of just maturity with Rome Odunze. I think he's more than capable of ironing out that part of his game. Again, it's just the awareness, but something to look at there. Ultimately, didn't have a massive impact. It's kind of hard to, especially as a wide receiver in a preseason game where you're only going to get so many opportunities. I thought that Rome Odunze did fine. Definitely areas of growth that are to come with Odunze. Jayden Daniels, I gave an A. Got a little bit more out of him this week in comparison to last week. This week it was 2 drives against the Dolphins, and I thought that Jayden Daniels was, just about flawless for what he was able to go out there and produce for the Commanders. Interesting note in this game was the fact that Cliff Kingsbury and the offense decided to play with a little bit more tempo in this game, and I thought that it didn't look, seamless and was maybe took a little bit of adjusting to, but definitely a look that it seems like the Commanders are going to be interested in utilizing with Jayden Daniels more. We know the athleticism with him. I'm curious, just the understanding of at the NFL game as well, him finding a way to be able to be mature in his approach, and again, just sort of reading the defenses. I thought he did a very good job in this game. 10 of 12, 78 yards, did everything that he was asked of. Ultimately, the touchdown drive wasn't there like it was last week, but still a lot to like out of what Jayden just showed, and he looks so comfortable in the pocket and his ability to continue to process that they are sort of trying to ramp up the different looks that they show Jayden Daniels during these preseason games with going up tempo, and I think that that's probably a positive statement on how things are going in camp and his ability to process things already at a normal pace. That what does it look like up tempo? So I gave him an A for his performance this weekend. Drake Maye, I gave him a B+. Probably should have had, retroactively here on the fly, probably should have had him around the exact same grade as Caleb Williams. Drake Maye, the overall production of the offense while he was on the field, I thought was better. And I thought that Drake Maye made less mistakes. Now, accuracy and precision is going to be something with Drake Maye where he seems to be leaving the ball a little bit high on a number of these throws, but overall, I just think that he's a gamer, and it was almost the smaller sample size for Drake Maye. I mean, he also got 2 full quarters himself as well, and we saw the third quarter where things started to, the offensive line started struggling more, and the offense overall sort of dipped off in productivity. But Drake Maye, I thought he showed a lot of very positive things. His ability to finally, show off the mobility that he has, that wasn't really on display week 1 for the Panthers, that he was able to sort of just almost even overcompensate for a little bit of some struggles on the offensive line that you saw immediately after a false start penalty. He was able to scramble up and make up that yardage to create a more manageable third down, which then he's able to convert in the air to Javon Baker. So I thought that Drake Maye took a lot of positive steps, starting to hear maybe a little bit more about how this quarterback competition isn't completely chalked in with Jacoby Brissett being the week 1 starter, but we'll see there. I give Drake Maye a B+. Now, I just wanted to at least include Michael Penix Jr. in this conversation for the sole purpose of, I don't know what the Falcons are doing, and this might be a more long-term segment maybe later this week, but the fact that Michael Penix Jr. didn't play at all and that the Falcons head coaching staff said that they saw enough from Michael Penix in week 1, despite the fact that the plan for them is to have Michael Penix sit on the bench for another couple years. I mean, why not just give him all the reps possible at this point? I really don't understand the thought process behind that, and I hated it. So Michael Penix, unable to give him a grade. I give the Falcons an F for that decision, though, on not playing Michael Penix Jr., because that's what the people want to see. But I suppose to some degree as well, they're trying to protect Kirk Cousins and not spark up any sort of a quarterback controversy. I feel like that's probably what the bigger thing was, but at the same time, I was very disappointed that Penix did not play. Bo Nix, last quarterback on the list here, I'm giving him an A-. I thought that he was really impressive in his game on Sunday night against the Packers. Now, a little bit more room to grow, I would say, in comparison to Jayden Daniels if we're just taking their week 2 performances here, where Bo Nix, there were just moments specifically in the red zone, the running over the line of scrimmage before throwing it to Javonte Williams. It was a really nice throw. The degree of difficulty on the run like that, scrambling out to his left, definitely not easy, but at the same time, you just got to be a little bit more heads up there. Either tuck the ball yourself, he would have easily been able to get first down yardage in my opinion, or just stop and let it rip and he probably would have had Javonte Williams all the same. And that's something I think that Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, I probably should have mentioned it there as well, they just need to maybe settle down a little bit. We know that they can hit some of these off-platform, on-the-move throws, but Caleb Williams specifically, we saw in that third drive the point where he sort of tried to, instead of just stopping and making the throw, there was a man in front of him who was being blocked, and he just sort of was almost looked like he was tripping on himself to let it fly there, and ultimately didn't have the precision he needed on that. So Bo Nix, maybe a couple wrinkles that you want to change up, but was 4 for 4 on the first drive. I believe finished the game with just 1 incompletion. So Bo Nix, in my opinion, I think should definitely lock up that quarterback 1 job in Denver. Another topic we will probably be discussing more in depth later this week. And then the last one that I just wanted to throw in here as well, because I was pretty locked in on the Giants game, was Malik Neighbors, where Neighbors had some big moments. Obviously didn't get thrown to in the first game. A lot of Giants fans were upset about that. This time 6 targets for Malik Neighbors, 4 catches, and overall I thought that it was pretty solid. Now, it's going to take him some game reps to fully get into the groove of everything. He couldn't hold on to his second target, getting both hands on it, but couldn't bring it in over Stingley. Definitely not an easy play, but one that he probably should have had getting two hands on it. That was coming right off of a play where he was a little bit soft on his curl route, and Daniel Jones almost threw an interception because Neighbors just sort of let Derek Stingley beat him to his spot in the intended, area where Neighbors was supposed to settle down. So a little bit sloppy of a first drive, but after that started to get himself going more from there. He had a couple of really nice catches on the sideline in this game, including a very impressive one on the 2-minute drill, going up, spinning, and bringing it back down. I thought that he was pretty impressive there. Overall, I think it's just being a little bit sharper. He also had a third down conversion on that same final drive of the first half where he was able to get himself open for whatever it's worth as well. He was matched up against the defensive back for the Texans. Gotta double check his name here real quick, but it was Mike Ford Jr., who was getting picked on a little bit. He was the one who allowed the big reception to Darius Slayton earlier in that second quarter as well. So Neighbors actually slipped on that third down conversion as well, but was still able to come up with it. Just sharpen things out a little bit more, and Malik Neighbors is going to be a star someday. So again, didn't get to go to everybody. So many games going on. It is still preseason, so I'm not just handing out grades for the sake of it. I don't want to, speculate on anything here, but let me know how you think I did and whether or not you think I was fair with a lot of these placements here. But we are now going to be taking our next break, and when we come back on the other side, we will be discussing the quarterback race for the Pittsburgh Steelers after neither Russell Wilson nor Justin Fields really pulled ahead in that conversation and that competition over the weekend, in large part due to external factors. So we're going to be breaking down all of that. But first, a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the face shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news if it's some losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, and we are now going to be diving into the quarterback battle that is still going on in Pittsburgh between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Mike Tomlin put out a quote last night saying that the competition between the two of them is still, quote, an incomplete study. And that is because of a couple things. First off, neither one of them really earned the job for themselves over the course of the weekend. Steelers offense just looked very dismantled, which is part of what ties into this, because when Tomlin talks about the incomplete study, a number of other factors interfered with just the evaluation of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. It's preseason, so you can't overreact by any means, but definitely some concerns popping up with that Steelers offense as things currently stand. And a big part of it being the offensive line and the run game. The quarterback situation, I mean, ultimately, do I love Russell Wilson or Justin Fields as competing really in that top 10, even top 15 quarterbacks in the league? I don't see that really happening, but if either one of them can just be solid, the idea is with a good defense, it should be enough. The Steelers won 10 games last year and their quarterback play wasn't good either, but it is a little bit more nuanced to that, especially considering I think that their division got better, got healthier for sure, especially at that quarterback position. And now you look at the Steelers, it's going to take more than just, solid play at the quarterback position, because I thought that their offensive line was massively concerning. I did a video last week about some red flags from the preseason, and one of the red flags was it's just preseason, can't put too much into it, but at the same time, the offensive line, I'm really not sold on, especially Broderick Jones, since he made his, starting debut halfway through last year. I think he's looked pretty rough in pass coverage on a number of instances. He let Gregory Rousseau absolutely manhandle him a couple times in this game, and that's an important spot for the Steelers. So offensive line, I have some concerns there, dealing with some injuries as well. Jaylen Warren goes out with a hamstring injury in this game, and he is expected to be out for a few weeks. So again, a lot of things sort of falling apart around the quarterback competition of Wilson and Fields that it makes it difficult for the coaching staff to really evaluate who gives them the better chance to win. Because in this game, it was neither of them. Russell Wilson started the game. He was 8 of 10, 47 yards, and was sacked 3 times. Justin Fields came in for the second half, and it was just the two of them, which was good to actually get extensive, looks at both of them. But Fields, ultimately, offense not that much more productive. 11 of 17, 92 yards, 0 scores. He was their leading rusher with 42 yards. Again, some of the stats don't really matter all that much. It's more so about what the eye test can actually show you. And eye test did not show much, I think, really for either one of these guys, where Russell Wilson, the Steelers only picked up 2 first downs total in his 4 drives at quarterback. One of them was in the air, and for whatever it's worth as well, one of them came when Russell Wilson was at least, he finally got a clean pocket, had guys open down the field, and he was able to hit Van Jefferson over the middle there for a conversion. Ultimately, Steelers end up missing a kick there, but that could have been a scoring drive for Russell Wilson there. But again, I just don't think that what we have seen from the rest of the Steelers, again, question mark at the quarterback position, but it's clearly showing that it might be a little bit more than that too with the Steelers, where I think it's just going to be really tough for them to, just expect to roll out there. And it's a Mike Tomlin coach team. Seems like what they've been able to do is sort of, manufacture wins almost out of their behinds in terms of being down late in games and being able to come back for whatever it's worth. Again, Kenny Pickett, especially after what we saw from him last Thursday, definitely not ready to say that, he's a starting caliber quarterback. I've been pretty as just about as pro Kenny Pickett as you can be. Definitely not arguing that he's special, but that I thought that he wasn't the problem with the Steelers offense last year. I thought that the offensive line had their struggles. The run game wasn't consistent. Obviously, they fired their coordinator halfway through the year in Matt Canada, which is something very un-Steelers-like to do throughout the course of a season. So, a lot of moving pieces for him. Kenny Pickett came up at the end of games last year for the Steelers. Now, again, is that more of a Mike Tomlin and how the organization is run thing? Or does Kenny Pickett maybe deserve a little bit of credit for putting together some pretty notable comeback drives? time will only tell here, depending on who we see as the starting quarterback. I mean, you would have to imagine that Russell Wilson, with all the experience that he's had, would be able to understand what sort of buttons to press in those final do-or-die drives. Definitely not a Russell Wilson guy at this point, myself personally, but I think it was maybe a game against the Vikings last year that we did see a little bit of Russell Wilson, putting together a run. It might have been the Bills game that I'm thinking of, again, just doing this sort of off the top of my head here. So don't want to get myself all twisted up in that right now. But, I mean, I guess we'll see. Ideally, the whole point is, though, the Steelers are hoping that their offense is more competent, that they don't have to rely on some sort of a miracle fourth quarter, final 2-minute drive, that they can actually have some real stability there. And I do think that Russell Wilson or Justin Fields can very likely be upgrades over what the Steelers had at quarterback last year, but the question is, do they have all of the other pieces as well? Troy Fautanu going down, the first-round selection for them this year, offensive lineman, him going down was a massive loss for them. I'm not sure exactly how long he's supposed to be out for, so we can look a little bit more into that. First looks here looks like two weeks or so, so could potentially be available for week 1. I think they kick off their game on September 8th. Might be their first game of the season, but that's at least a loss for now. And losing Jaylen Warren as well in the running game. Like, this is a fine Steelers offense, but I do think that they are a little bit thin in a lot of categories, and having some of these crucial injuries pop up on the offensive line and in the backfield, that is a really tough situation, again, for the coaching staff to be able to expect Wilson or Fields to overcome all of this. So, I mean, ultimately, I think that the job is going to be Russell Wilson's. I'll say this, Justin Fields, the improvisation with him and just being able to use his legs, I think that that's something that raises the floor of this Pittsburgh offense. If there are other issues that are going on, it's not like Russell Wilson's a statue in the pocket. He is still, he was one of the original, improvisers of the 2010s. And as we started to head more so into this dual threat quarterback era, Russell Wilson, it's not like he was ever a massive designed run plays guy, but he was always able to make things happen with his legs. So it's not that he's incapable of doing that, but if it's going to be a little bit messy in the trenches for the Steelers, I do think that there's a good chance that Justin Fields could be more cut out for handling that pressure. Some of the stats that came from Russell Wilson's time in Denver, in large part, was that their pass blocking was actually pretty solid in Wilson's couple seasons there in Denver, but he was the most sacked quarterback during that time frame, despite having, I think he was within the top 10 of, average time to throw according to ESPN analytics. And we saw a little bit, him hold on to the ball slightly too long. Again, it's not like his offensive line did him any services in their game over the weekend, but at the same time, it was notable, obviously, having those 3 sacks take place in his 4 drives. He was sacked more times than the Steelers picking up first downs, which is, a little bit of an apples to orange comparisons there, but it was not a productive showing with Russell Wilson in the game. Fields, not that much better, but I do kind of feel like you can sort of structure the Bears were second, I believe, in the NFL. They might have even been first in the NFL in 2022 with Justin Fields. That's when he was running the ball all over the place. That's when the Bears only won 2 games, so it's definitely not an exact recipe that you're trying to follow, but it's at least something that you can be confident that your offense is good at, is running the ball. And I think that Justin Fields, again, at least provides that little bit of a higher floor than what Russell Wilson gives you. But There's also, the turnover factor as well, which has definitely hurt Justin Fields in the past couple seasons as he's tried to establish himself as a true starting quarterback in the NFL. So there's not an easy solution here, and it seems like the Steelers are going to look to run into week 3 as to, whether or not they're going to decide on a starting quarterback before then. We'll see. Maybe it's this week in camp that really changes things up for them. But the Steelers are slated to play the Detroit Lions on Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So we will definitely be keeping an eye on whether or not we have a definitive answer on who will be the week 1 starting quarterback for the Steelers by then. But from one quarterback competition to another, we are now going to be shifting gears to talking about the Las Vegas Raiders, who made their announcement for who they plan to start this season. They made that decision just yesterday morning after they played on Saturday night, so we'll be diving into that, talking about whether or not it is the right decision. But first, we will be taking a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we are now going to be reacting to the news that the Las Vegas Raiders have decided to move forward with Gardner Minshew as their starting quarterback, which is a little bit of an unexpected decision for me. I mean, ultimately, the Raiders decided to sign Gardner Minshew to a 2-year deal this offseason, and it was very clear that they didn't feel all that confident in their in-house options, specifically looking at Aiden O'Connell to be the player that can, be the leading guy moving forward. Now, that being said, I do think that we are all pretty aware of Gardner Minshew's shortcomings as a quarterback, and I don't love the idea of fully handing him the keys here. Ultimately, when you look at the performance from both of these players in their preseason game over the weekend, it was interesting because neither one of them really did all that much to convince the Raiders of who they should be leaning in favor of. Gardner Minshew this past weekend, 10 of 21, 95 yards, and 1 interception. Interception was pretty brutal. Now, if I were to defend him a little bit, I do think that Minshew a little bit in this game looked like he was almost playing for his job, like especially the interception, I believe, came on a play where he was, or at least a really bad decision where he was trying to almost on third down force a play while going on the run, trying to extend the drive, and ultimately he ends up throwing a really bad pass, and it ends up, I think the play I'm talking about actually ended up in an incompletion, so don't mind that. But it was right at the end of the first quarter. Minshew made an awful decision trying to sort of force a ball in there, almost like he was trying to, almost like he knew that the idea that the starting quarterback job could be taken from him if the drive ended there. And overall, he just looked pretty rough, but it's not like Aiden O'Connell necessarily did himself any favors either once he got into the game. And O'Connell's first pass was a pretty nice throw over the middle off of a play action between a couple defenders for a nice pickup. It seemed like O'Connell was building up a little bit of momentum for himself throughout the course of the game. And then ultimately, O'Connell just threw a brutal pick six to start off the fourth quarter that did a little bit seem like he was maybe in the process of locking down a job for himself, but it's just a very bad play where he was slow going through his progressions, and he was just read like a book by the defender who got him and took it for six, and that ended up ending the night for Aiden O'Connell, but it might have also ended up ending the chances of him becoming the starting quarterback for the Raiders this upcoming season. But again, it's not like Gardner Minshew was very effective throughout his time either. It sort of just comes down to the idea of, at least for me, when I think about this conversation, Aiden O'Connell has the unknown behind him that almost makes him a more intriguing prospect for them that, Aiden O'Connell is probably a very similar talent to Gardner Minshew. I don't think that one quarterback gives you a significantly higher chance of winning than the other, but at least with Aiden O'Connell, maybe it's something where the locker room can start to buy into it, but I don't want to start speculating on that because maybe the locker room is bought into Gardner Minshew as well. It's probably even more so about the fan base than the locker room itself. But the Raiders, coming off of what was a really, really ugly first half of the season last year when they had Josh McDaniels in town and Jimmy Garoppolo was clearly not the answer for them, that they're just trying to improve morale this year and keep themselves competitive and give themselves a chance on a weekly basis to win a football game. And if that's the case, Gardner Minshew might just be the obvious pick there because we saw him do some pretty significant things with the Colts last year. It's not like he was unbelievable. That was a more talented Colts team than I think the casual NFL fan realizes, but Minshew, when he was playing, was pretty effective. Threw for 3,300 yards in 13 games, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he had a winning record in his starts, was 7-6. So Minshew, it seemed like, was a good enough option for the Colts last year and could be just a good enough option for the Raiders this year. Again, sort of on the idea of this unknown. We know what Gardner Minshew already is. And I suppose that at this point with the Raiders, consistency is just kind of their main goal of, again, week to week, we know we have a chance to win this game. Aiden O'Connell, with so much more unproven there, I understand it. I do. But I also had sort of talked myself into, before we had gotten the answer on this, that I almost like Gardner Minshew more as a backup coming in for a starter, whether it be performance-based or injury. Like, Gardner Minshew isn't, I don't see him as like a frontline ace, almost for a baseball metaphor here. I see him more as a really quality middle reliever who isn't going to start the game for you, but he can keep you alive for as long as, you are in the game. But I wouldn't necessarily have all of my investment into Gardner Minshew, so I don't know. I was kind of hoping to see a little bit of a late season Minshew mania run, but instead he starts the season. I can't say that that's a bad decision whatsoever. I think that their quarterback situation as a whole is just sort of messy, and that they just weren't ever going to have, a great answer at the position for this upcoming season. It's just almost that much more disappointing considering the fact that, Minshew and O'Connell, neither one of them impressed in their most recent game, and it did seem like the Raiders almost made the decision. And again, this is totally me inflecting my own opinions on this game onto the coaching staff decision, but I don't feel like it was the Raiders sitting there. It's like, yeah, Gardner Minshew gives us a chance to win a lot of games this year. It's that Gardner Minshew will give us less of a chance of losing, maybe, than Jayden O'Connell. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too negative. Let me know in the comments section what your thoughts on that are. I mean, the Raiders ultimately have a fine receiving core and fine options, around the quarterback position. I don't think, the Colts probably were overall better, just with, they have two receivers in Michael Pittman and Josh Downs, kind of similar with the Raiders of having Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, probably about net even. Colts have a lot of tight ends, but so do the Raiders with Michael Maye and Brock Bowers. Running back situation in the offensive line is where I definitely give the edge to the Colts. Just for the sake of Gardner Minshew, how is he going to look in this new offense, in this new setting? I think he'll be fine, but, he'll be fine for his own standards, which I definitely wouldn't put among the top end of quarterbacks. Will probably be a team that, as much as, I am really rooting for them to succeed because I love Antonio Pierce, but I think that the roster is just not necessarily there yet, and especially at that quarterback position, they don't have the answer in my eyes, and I don't know how many people would really argue that they are fully sold on the quarterback room in Las Vegas. But if you are one of those people, let us know in the comments section as to why, because I think that it's probably going to be an uphill battle for the Raiders in this upcoming season. But we are now going to be moving on here to our last football segment of the day, where over the weekend we saw Daniel Jones make his first return. He made his first return back from his torn ACL injury that took place in November. So we'll be breaking down how he looked and whether there is anything serious to take away from the game as to what the Giants will look like in the future. So stick with us, and we will be right back after this quick break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we are now going to be diving into the performance from New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones. The Giants faced off against the Texans on Saturday, and Daniel Jones was able to play his first game in 10 months, considering he ended up missing the majority of the 2023 season with a torn ACL that he suffered in early November against the Raiders. So it was the first time Daniel Jones has gotten game reps since then, and he played the entire first half. It was a shaky start, to say the least, where he ended up throwing 2 interceptions on the first 3 drives, including a pick 6. Now, the pick 6 was the first of the group, and frankly, it was just inexcusable in my opinion. Now, Giants backed up on their own 8-yard line, so a tough situation to begin with, but at that point, especially for a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who has played 5 NFL seasons, that you have to understand, backed up in your own territory, ball security is the number one thing. And it was just a very significant mental lapse, in my opinion, that took place on that second drive. that resulted in the pick six for him. He held onto the ball way too long. It was a play action pass, and after the initial run fake, Daniel Jones was sitting back in the pocket all alone. And then he starts floating out to his left a little bit, where you have the defender starting to crash in on him, and he gives a pump fake for, I think Barnett was the man in front of him for the Texans, gives a pump fake trying to get him to jump or something. Barnett just continued through and wrapped up Daniel Jones, and then to make things even, first off, just get rid of the ball there. There's no need to, what are you going to fake out the D lineman and then get to the outside for a minimal gain? That's not good quarterbacking. So should have just gotten rid of the ball there. Bad IQ, and then made things worse for himself while he was being wrapped up and taken to the ground. He was trying to avoid giving up the two for the safety, and instead ends up just sort of floating the ball out to the left and ends up being picked off for a very easy 6 from Texans defensive back Jalen Petrie. So the play and the preseason as a whole, obviously very little stakes for the season itself, and especially for Daniel Jones, considering that he was playing in his first game in 10 months. But that's a pretty inexcusable mistake, and if it were to occur in the regular season, he can get a pass for this game, and especially considering, again, first game action in almost an entire year. But it was brutal, and obviously considering what the general consensus about Daniel Jones already is, not a lot of people are going to give him a pass there. So I'm definitely not overreacting, but it was bad. And then the second interception wasn't great either, where he was looking for Jalen Hyatt down the right sideline. The Giants had crossed the 50-yard lines, were getting themselves into scoring position, and again, just going for Hyatt down the right sideline, just didn't have enough arm power on it. There was a blitz coming at him, so probably impacted it to some degree, but just the strength of the ball, strength on the arm, just not necessarily there, at least for this individual play, and trying to get Hyatt versus a cornerback that's as good as Derek Stingley is. You just can't give Stingley that good of an opportunity to make the play. Stingley was unbelievable in this game. One of the most underappreciated cornerbacks in the NFL, in my opinion. And, he cashed in at least on that chance. He had another chance as well earlier in the game where, I'm pointing to the interceptions on the second and third drives. The very first pass attempt by Daniel Jones also could have been intercepted by Derek Stingley Jr. Now that one, it's less so on Daniel Jones as it is as well. We talked about this in the first segment. Malik Neighbors, he was supposed to run a curl route and was just pretty lazy route running for him, where he just was so passive, and Stingley beat Malik Neighbors to the point where Neighbors was supposed to be at. Probably a poor decision on Daniel Jones to let that ball go anyways, but, again, I do think that Neighbors deserves some credit for the mistake there, but again, you could have had 3 interceptions and 3 drives for Daniel Jones, and he just has so many question marks around him as it is that it was a bad start. Now, end of the day, on a better note, he closed out the second quarter with a couple scoring drives. The first one, he made a really nice throw down the left sideline to Darius Slayton that picked up 44 yards and set them up to allow Devin Singletary to punch it in for a touchdown in the run game there. And then on the last drive, couple third down conversions through the air, including a really nice one as well to Wan'Dale Robinson, and there was another one to Neighbors there too. So, I think that Jones got a little bit more comfortable as the game went on, also while some of the Texans starters came out, for whatever that's worth as well. But, Daniel Jones, it's not like he was nobody was expecting him to come back and look, at the top of his game immediately coming off of the injury, but there's going to be significant question marks around Daniel Jones all season long. And as for, what this performance means for his season as a whole, I think that the biggest thing is just that the bar is probably a lot lower for Daniel Jones now than it was in comparison to when he initially signed the contract, because now at this point, this is the final fully guaranteed season for Daniel Jones under this contract, meaning I think that very much more than likely the Giants are going to part ways with Daniel Jones this offseason before the final 2 years do become fully guaranteed. And I think that they are probably just hoping that he can be a fine option for them so that they can at least be a cleaner offense than they were last season. Having the inconsistency in the quarterback room is always sort of a doomsday situation for an NFL team in 2024, and that was a little bit of the case last year once Daniel Jones went down. Not that they were doing all that much while he was in anyways, but they tried to invest into the offensive line a little bit more. They drafted Malik Neighbors, like I mentioned. I think that he has a lot of things he needs to sharpen up on, but Neighbors should easily be the best wide receiver that Daniel Jones has ever played with. And we talk all the time about some of the other quarterbacks in recent years that have been set up to fail by their organizations. Justin Fields gets that treatment more than anything else. Mac Jones, I stand by. Patriots kind of failed him. We're even looking at Bryce Young's rookie year and saying that that was a lot on the Panthers. All of those I agree with, but somehow, maybe it's just because it's the Giants, and it's also probably also because of the fact that Daniel Jones was seen as a reach when he was first taken anyways, that first impression for a lot of people was that it wasn't a great pick, and it hasn't reared its head that way. Daniel Jones has had such a lack of talent around him throughout the first 5 years of his NFL career, and now they are finally giving him a true, I mean, they tried to draft the first round wide receiver in Kadarius Toney a few years ago. Obviously that didn't work out for them, but it just took them so long to even give a passable offense really to Daniel Jones. And not that I ever was one that thought that Daniel Jones was going to be a great quarterback, but I do feel like for all the excuse making we do for a lot of the other, quarterbacks that we really like in the NFL, Daniel Jones has somehow not gotten any sort of a free pass for what has been a pretty incompetent job by the Giants front office over the course of these past few seasons. And, I think that ultimately it's just going to go down as a little bit of a messy stretch for the Giants. Again, as much as I can feel bad for Daniel Jones, I wouldn't want to pay him the money that he's guaranteed over the next couple of years. I can double check right now here on the fly a little bit on what he would be fully guaranteed. It was a 4-year, $160 million deal when it was initially signed, and now, over the course of the next 2 seasons, it would be $30 million in base salary next year, and it would be $46.5 million in 2026. Even worse if you look at the cap hits, $41.6 million in 25, $58.6 in 26. So, there's no way, in my opinion, the Giants are making that type of a decision to pick up the rest of that. But, if you feel differently in the comment section, we have some Daniel Jones optimists. Definitely be sure to let us know why in the comment section. But that is really all I have on his performance for this game. Again, nothing too unexpected. Didn't look great overall. I'd probably give it C minus grade. But at the same time, I think that it's preseason. It's his first game back. Gonna have to see a little bit more of him to, fully write him off for good. But that's really all we have on NFL for the day. We're going to be taking our final break next, and when we come back on the other side, we're going to be shifting gears to a little bit of MLB with the Boston Red Sox splitting their weekend series against the Baltimore Ravens, keeping their foot in the race for a wild card spot, but things are only continuing to get more difficult ahead of them, so we will be diving into that. But first, our final break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are going to be breaking down the weekend series between the Boston Red Sox and Baltimore Orioles. This was a 4-game series that kicked off last Thursday and finished up over the weekend, and this marks a stretch here for the Red Sox where they have a number of playoff opponents ahead on the schedule. It was going straight from here into a couple series against the Houston Astros and the Arizona Diamondbacks. All of this while the Red Sox are back in the wild card spot. So this was for the series and still is a very important stretch for the Red Sox to keep their head above the water if they want to make the playoffs. And ultimately, a series split is kind of just about as good as you could have asked for. You look up and down, and we're going to get into some of the pitching matchups specifically, but for the Red Sox, just very much outmatched on the starting pitching front. And so to be able to take 2 out of these games is sort of a testament to how well the offense has been producing. Now, I know they were just about silent for 2 of the games in this series, so I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but specifically I'm looking at Game 2, the matchup, basically a bullpen game for the Boston Red Sox, with Brennan Bernardino starting for them versus Corbin Burnes, who is undoubtedly going to be as long as he remains healthy, I would say a finalist for the American League Cy Young Award. And they ended up giving Burnes his worst start of the season, where Burnes at this point, I think the most earned runs that he had allowed in a single game up to this point all year was 4, and the Red Sox ended up jumping him, got him for a season shortest, just 4 innings pitched, 10 hits, 3 walks, 8 earned runs, and was, again, the shortest start of his season and the most earned runs of his season. So Red Sox were able to jump him. Even then, it took a lot to be able to actually pull off this game. They end up winning 12-10 in what was just such a back and forth affair between the two of them. That was a game that was incredibly taxing, obviously, considering that it was a bullpen game. Bernardino didn't even make it out of the first inning. You have Cooper Criswell eating some innings there for the Sox as well, causing a little bit of scares there. 6 earned runs in that game, taking on a little bit more of the bulk, though, with 3 1/3 innings pitched. And I think that, ultimately, like I said, very deep into the bullpen. I believe they used 8 arms in this game, and it took all of the offense they could possibly muster to be able to put up the 12 runs that was enough to win this game. But A very exciting part of this game as well was the fact that Tristan Casas made his return from injury. Casas had been out with a rib strain since late April. Now, they had to DFA Dom Smith in order to make this deal happen, which, as a Red Sox fan, I had grown to love Dom Smith so much. So I was pretty devastated when the news first broke, but ultimately just wasn't really a roster spot for him. And after seeing Casas get some looks over the course of this series, I definitely, as much as I will never forget you, Dom Smith, for the legend that you were during this short period of time, definitely kept the Red Sox alive in some instances. But Casas is the future, and he made a couple nice defensive plays early on in Game 2, ultimately had a pretty productive offensive series as well, and the lineup just looks so much better with him in it. I was really impressed with what we saw from him in a pretty small sample size of just 3 games, but definitely had me excited for the future a little bit more in that one. But Game 2, I mentioned all of the arms that were used in order to survive that game, because that's literally what it was surviving despite having all of the offense in the world, really. It took everything in them to be able to stay alive in that. Game 3 was going to take a very important Brian Bayo outing to be able to actually hang in there for some good time and be able to, relieve the bullpen of some innings. And ultimately, Bayo was very incredible, I thought, in this game. 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 3 walks, don't love that, but just 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts. It was really just the Gunnar Henderson solo shot, and that was the first hit of the game, which took place, I believe that was in the 5th inning? It was in the 6th inning. And then right after that, he started to stumble into a little bit of issues there as well. Allowed a couple hits, but was able to settle himself back down, use the mound meeting with the staff there and Andrew Bailey, and ultimately got himself back down, was able to, I think it was Anthony Santander that he ended up striking out there, and was able to survive there and finish off the inning, which was so needed for the Red Sox. So and then the other part of that game as well that I think is very notable is Cade Povich, who is the number 5 Orioles prospect according to Baseball America, that he probably played his best professional major league game yet, where I thought that Povich was actually very good in this one. 6 1/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, did allow two earned runs in that final inning where, he sort of started to come apart a little bit, but just the very key difference for him was for the Red Sox was that Povich sort of dealing, as a lefty starting pitcher, that has been one of the Achilles heels of the Red Sox all season long. And then once Povich ends up getting pulled in that 7th inning, they bring in a right-hander in Yennier Cano, and they start to tee off on him. You see Devers and Yoshida, they all start to sort of put up runs. And by the way, one last thing on Povich as well. I know it's a lefty-lefty matchup, but I was definitely intrigued when the Orioles decided to leave Povich out there for Devers' 3rd at-bat. Just letting Devers see, anybody 3 times feels a little bit risky, but Povich handled his business, I thought. So that was definitely, if you're an Orioles fan, got to feel pretty confident about that. But again, Sox, once the right-hander comes in, they start putting up the offense. They end up winning that game 5-1. But outside of those 2 games, it was a pretty quiet offensive series for the Red Sox. They end up splitting. Again, though, kind of feel like I didn't get to see quite as much of Sunday's game with everything that was going on. I know they had their chances, and it's frustrating there, especially when the Sox are able to sort of get through those first few innings and feel like they maybe have some opportunities, but not being able to take 3 out of 4 against the Orioles would have been a massive morale boost. But even still, again, I think the name of the game right now is for the Red Sox is they cannot be losing series. Winning series is obviously where you want to be at. And to some degree, you can make the argument that just about every game is must win for the Red Sox at this point. But there is still, a month and some change left of this 2024 regular season that the Red Sox, they just need to be trending in the positive direction and, not letting themselves get spaced out too much. As much as I mentioned, the Red Sox are in the middle of this stretch against a number of playoff teams. Following that, they have the Blue Jays, the Tigers, the Mets are a solid team there, but then the White Sox after that, and during that stretch, during that same timeline, I think that the Kansas City Royals are supposed to be playing basically all playoff teams for that 3-week stretch. The Sox are currently 3.5 games back of the Royals, but that is where, they are definitely going to need to take advantage, try and make up as much room as they possibly can, because the Red Sox are technically in this thing, but they don't have a lot of wiggle room. And now they're signing a 44-year-old, I think that's how old he is, Rich Hill, to try and, eat up some innings for them. And that's just the state of where the Red Sox are at right now and their pitching staff in particular. So I don't exactly have the highest of hopes for the Red Sox to be able to, stay all that alive in this race. But this is a lineup now, especially with Casas back in the mix. Tyler O'Neill as well returning from the IL. He had a leg infection. With those bats back in the lineup, I mean, this is absolutely a group of hitters that deserve chances in the postseason and could be able to get hot at the right time. But ultimately, this season was never about the Red Sox making the playoffs in particular, but it's there. Got to go for it. That's what the best organizations do. You have Alex Cora signed to this new contract. Push your chips in and go get it. But might be too much to overcome on the pitching front in order to fully have that play out, but time will tell. And again, very important stretch right now. They kick off a series against the Houston Astros tonight. Going to be important in these next, few weeks to really decide, are the Red Sox serious? We've seen them hanging around in postseason contention into August for the past few years, and we've seen them fall off a cliff from there. This is the time the Red Sox need to take advantage, but will they have the gas to be able to hold on? Not sure. We will see. But that is all the time we have for our show today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Be sure to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will be back tomorrow afternoon, same time as always, at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. You can catch us then. Take care. We will see you then.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that